Hello. This is a speech that I wrote for the 2011 BIL Conference. I attended the 2009 BIL Conference held at Long Beach State University and was much impressed by the rules. These were that there weren't any rules. I decided that if I ever were to make a speech, I would like to do it according to these rules. This year, I do have a speech to make. It is about a book I had written and published in 2006. The book is titled Parity Democracy: How to Level the World Economic Playing Field. The book forecast that there would soon be economically trying times, and that this book envisioned a plan to pick up the pieces from the ensuing fall. The trying times have come, however, the pieces have not been picked up. That has a lot to do with the fact that even though this book is being sold at online bookstores and chains all over the world, hardly any have been sold. At least that's what my publisher claims. He's probably telling the truth, though, because everything is the same as it was then, and the world is still operating with the same obsolete economic unfair rules that were in use in 2006. For this reason, the book written in 2006 is not obsolete, but the rules by which the world economy is governed still are. It's called Parity Democracy. And that's what this speech is about. To start with, since we are dealing with a global problem of leveling the world economic playing field, we need to ask why it is not level. What is the economic system in most countries that causes there to be gross differences in the economic satisfaction of the citizen of one country as compared to others? The answer seems simple enough. It is called capitalism. Even the most populous country in the world, though communist in name, is really that only politically. The economic system practiced in China, by contrast, has gone over to capitalism. Or has it? One of the many iconoclastic things I had to say in Parity Democracy in 2006 was that the communist Chinese had transformed their economy into capitalism. No one was saying that out loud then. Now, everyone says it. But how true is this? The really iconoclastic thing I said was that the Chinese were not concerned about this transformation being capitalism, because it isn't really capitalism. If it is not capitalism, then what is it? The short answer is it is corporatocracy, which is really decentralized socialism. The Chinese finally realize this, if we haven't. What is the significance of this for the U.S.? You have to understand a little history perspective to appreciate this. Teddy Roosevelt and Howard Taft, two turn-of-the-19th century presidents, realized that corporations were a dangerous threat to democracy. There was a serious debate as to whether corporations had enough merit to risk allowing them to exist and threaten democracy, as it was believed they did. It was decided, after much political hand-wringing, that as long as the government could control them, the risk was an acceptable one. Now we find ourselves in just the position that was feared most. The corporate tail is wagging the dog. This question, whether corporations are worth the risk, is now a moot question. The real question now is, do corporations have the right to control our government? As they do. After 100 years of relentless PR intended to win this argument, the corporations seem to have answered this question successfully in the affirmative. They have accomplished this ideological conversion by convincing the public that if there are problems, big government is the problem. They have convinced a large part of the public that what is best for America is government that is shrunk in size to the point that it cannot interfere with corporations being the main agency in charge of solving the economic puzzle. So much for government big enough to control them and protect us from their predation. Poor Teddy Roosevelt. How has this ideological power shift played out for the corporation's bottom line? Their bought minions, now in control in Congress, once our representatives, heeding their master's call, are showing us the way. If they can't prevent laws that are considered noxious to corporations from being passed, they defund or underfund these laws so that they cannot be enforced. And the corporations now have the money, thanks to the so-called conservative-controlled Supreme Court, to make sure the last nail has been driven into the coffin of democracy. This activist action is a perversion of the term conservative. It is really a radical coup d'etat, a push, a takeover in the name of status quo conservatives. All of this must be changed or democracy is dead in America. One special group cannot have the power to buy control of the government or democracy is dead. Democracy is dead in America at this point because corporations have the power and they have announced they are going to openly exercise it. Recently, 2/24/11, the giant oil giants, through their main lobby, the American Petroleum Institute, arrogantly announced they would make a campaign contributions directly and openly to the politicians they favor. All pretense of non-interference in the political process is to be dropped in favor of open political influence. With this political combativeness, they have openly declared democracy to be dead, and if not dead, seriously moribund. And reviving supine democracy is going to be the greatest challenge in the history of this country. Greater than the Civil War, greater than World War II, and greater than recovering from the Great Depression caused, like the present one, by corporate arrogance and lack of respect for democracy. And recovering from our current economic malaise is only going to happen if we take our democracy back from those corporations run wild and require them to restore our economy. They have moved abroad. They have now turned this country into a cauldron of incipient bully fascism. Hitler got into power by frightening people with the specter of communism. That's how he got the financing from corporations that put him into power. The corporations' minions today have been using the same tactics. They label our current political leaders they don't like as socialists, even when there is no more proof of this than that than that the moon is made of green cheese. Pretty good, too. And poorly informed people, or misinformed people, or stupid people that listen to their right-wing controlled disinformation media believe them and vote for them to the detriment of the rest of us, because they have been convinced of the opposite of what is true, that government is a problem, that government is too big. The problem is not that government is too big or too small. Nobody really knows the answer to this. Government needs to be just the right size to govern properly. It needs to be able to govern corporations and anyone else that has the power to sway government inappropriately. The problem with government today is that corporations will not allow this proper governing, Imagine if the mafia could buy the government the way the corporations have. Just imagine. Would they not do the same thing the corporations are doing? Would they not fleece the American public much the same way that corporations are? We all know the answer to that. We now find ourselves in the midst of an economic malaise that many people attribute to the usurpation of our democracy by corporations. There is very high, abnormally stubborn unemployment in the land. We find ourselves coming out of a deep and dangerous recession sparked by the depredations of financial corporations. Usually, by this point in coming out of a recession, jobs that have been lost largely return. But they are not in sufficient numbers, and they are way overdue. The question on everyone's mind is, will they come back, and if not, why? The answer is one that has been coming for many years, decades. The answer, in all likelihood, is that they will not. If so, what can we do to bring them back? This is where Parity Democracy comes in. We have to accept the fact that faulty economic policies in the last 30 years or so have finally caught up with us. These are policies that were started during the Cold War to make us more economically friendly to non-communist countries, so they wouldn't go over to the other side. We did this by reducing our tariffs to almost nothing and calling it free trade, which it isn't and never has been. There is no such thing as free trade. They were very successful Cold War policies, however, in making friends by selling our economy to them cheap. Our biggest enemies have since become our best friends. We managed to survive these wise Cold War policies in spite of the self-economic immolation it entailed, at least until the end of the Cold War. Up to 1945, America had some of the highest tariffs of any country in the world. And why shouldn't we have had? We could make anything in the world here that can be made. And we could make it here without any fear of foreign competition ruining our companies and taking our jobs. Then the Cold War free trade economic policies of our government went into effect to help our allies. Many of our corporations discovered very soon, to their dismay, they could no longer compete with the foreigners, and many went out of business. Soon, however, corporations discovered they could compete with the foreign competition by becoming the foreign competition themselves. In order to survive and do this, they started a massive PR campaign that claimed that for every job that was outsourced, 2 would come back. Ha ha! That was a good one. They realized that without this PR campaign, the criticism would be so great, what was to become known as outsourcing would somehow be prohibited because of the outrage it would cause. Under this PR cover, what began as a trickle of lost jobs from outsourcing has now become a tsunami, and the jobs never came back, even one for one, and never will unless the economic rules are changed. You better believe it. This begs the question, why do we not fix this outdated Cold War policy and put the tariffs back to where we can restore our economy to making it profitable for Americans to be able to produce anything successfully in America as we once did? The easy answer is that it is because of the stupidity of the American government to not change an outdated Cold War policy in time for it not get out of control and eat our economy. Unfortunately, this is not the most important reason. The real reason is it is not to the economic interests of the corporations that are dominating our political system to bring back our outdated economy, our outsourced economy. Not only are they benefiting from cheap labor and cheap operating costs overseas, but also countries like China have a tariff difference of 25% on our goods against 2.5% on their goods. It is cheaper to operate as a Chinese company and pay a 2.5% tariff to the U.S. than it is to pay 25% exporting to China. So our corporations have become a true fifth column in America, promoting the policies of our enemy, China, and doing everything possible to sabotage anything the American government wants to do to change policies economically favor to China, where most of their energies are focused. And what is worse, they are at times transferring technology that will give China a decisive advantage if there were ever a war between the two countries. So there is a grave security issue here. If the corporate-dominated Congress will not change these economic disabilities that are killing our economy, what is to be done? Two things need to be done. The Supreme Court must be reformed and changed, and the Congress must be legally wrested away from representing the corporations. Although both of these appear to be impossibilities at this time, they must be done as soon as possible. The Supreme Court has to go in its present form. It has overturned our democracy twice with recent decisions. Once when it unfairly awarded the presidency to George W. Bush, and a second time when the Citizens United decision that gives the corporation free speech rights to spend money to elect the officials that favor their needs. It is unlikely, in view of this activism of the court, that our democracy is ever going to be safe as long as the Supreme Court has the last word about it, as it now does. What I suggest is a revolutionary reform of the Supreme Court, as impossible as it sounds. That puts in place the possibility of some kind of binding national referendum on its controversial decisions. Without some kind of reform like this, we are doomed to what I believe is representative fascism, which I define as a partnership between corporations and the government to defeat the best interests of the people. And the court is enabling this by its legal support of the corporations. It is not democracy when the representatives of the people are not representing the people, but are representing business interests whose goal is not the welfare of its fellow citizens, but the maximum welfare of its stakeholders at the expense of its fellow citizens. And the whole outsourcing spectacle is the best example of this you can imagine. This whole diatribe is an attempt to put into perspective what is badly out of focus, that American democracy has been undermined and usurped by forces, if not overcome and reversed, are going to permanently destroy any chance of this country to achieve the greatness that most of us believe is our deserved, natural, and God-given right. There is no excuse except for the cupidity and stupidity of our government working for corporations why China, a totalitarian dictatorship, has been sold our economy for a lot of cheap beads and trinkets. We must do whatever it takes to reverse this takeover of our government by the forces of greed. Others, at great cost, are trying to get democracy. We must try by all means necessary to get our democracy back. It won't be done without the overwhelming voice of the people taking matters into their own hands. It won't be gotten back by hope or praying or magic change. It will only be gotten back by taking it back by whatever means is available. If it means massive demonstrations, so be it. If it means massive legal Zoom sold to us by Robert Shapiro, so be it. Whatever it takes, our democracy must be taken back from those who have successfully overthrown it, and they must be made to serve the will of all the American people before they can serve their bottom line. Thank you.